Hi, my name is Gordy Hoag, and this is Community Connections. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people. People who've had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who've had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hoag, and today's guest is a very accomplished, thoughtful, principled man. His ventures into business, philosophy, writing, and a myriad of other areas have always been most interesting and most rewarding. An entertaining conversationalist, that's my delight to welcome Hank Leis. Welcome, Hank, to Community Connections.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction.
Well, it's certainly an accurate portrayal of everything I know about you.
Well, thank
So
you very much.
tell us a little bit about where you were born and about growing up and how you ended up in the South Surrey community, South Surrey White Rock.
Well, I was born on May the 9th, 1943 in Haapsalu, Estonia. So like many of the people who were trying to escape the Russian movement into the Baltic countries, my family was one group that proceeded on a journey from Estonia through Germany and then all the way to Canada. We ended up in Canada in 1947, just on the outskirts of Montreal, a place called McKayville on the south shore of Montreal. And basically, that's where I grew up. I went to school in St. Lambert, Chambly County High School, which I think was probably one of the best places to get educated. Really, the school was top notch. The teachers were absolutely excellent, and I really think that I got a great grounding in Chambly County High School. So I went on from there to university and spent some time in Montreal and in Ottawa. And from Ottawa, I came to Vancouver in 1965. And almost immediately, I got into the mining business. I was hired by a fellow by the name of Greg McCrae, who was president of Gross Creek Mines. And they had an operating mine out in Barkerville, the Barkerville area.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was on his mind, but he thought that I could actually manage a mine at the age of 23. So I went up to Wells and then Barkerville and started to manage this gold mine. It was we had people working 3 shifts every day, and it was just an unbelievable job. And you can imagine it was a real learning experience for me at the age of 23. I did such a lousy job that he decided that I should become a director of the firm, which was better suited to what I was doing or what I knew about. And of course, I didn't know anything about being a director either. So everything for me was and still is a real learning experience. I learned about the different phases of mining and how the industry worked, how it was financed. And you may remember the good old Vancouver Stock Exchange days where just about everything went. And so in that period of time, I became a director of a company and found out just how exploration worked in the province. And I spent a lot of time out in the field learning the different things that were being done there. And so eventually I thought that I could start my own business. And of course, by the time I was 24, I was a genius. So
We're all
I just,
geniuses at 24, aren't we?
well, the thing is that you know so much when you're 24 and you know so little when you're 78. So, but you have the kind of courage based on ignorance that you don't have later on, and sadly that's the case. The older you get, the dumber you get. At least in my case, anyway. And so I started my own company. It was called Strato Geological Engineering, and I started hiring people and people who knew what they were doing. The first person I hired was president of the company because I realized that no one takes a 24-year-old very seriously. And I put this ad in the newspaper advertising for a retired executive who knew something about the mining business. And so I hired a fellow by the name of Frank Cuddy. He had been in the oil business in Calgary, and he kind of took over the helm. And whenever my ignorance at meetings would show up, which was quite frequently, I would say, well, I'm sorry, but I have to go back to the president of the company and ask him how he feels about it or what he thinks. So I'd rush off to the library or talk to people and then found out what the issue was, and then go back and explain to people who were potential clients just how I would do the work for them. And we ended up, the company, I think we worked with that company until 1990 something. So it really set my whole life, the patterns, the things I learned.
Why did your family make a decision to come to Canada? What was involved in that kind of choice?
Well, it is kind of interesting that they chose Canada because there was really no alternative. As a child, I ended up in one of those camps in Germany, or my family did. And so I had TB, and the Americans wouldn't accept anyone who had that kind of illness, and Canada was the only country that would. And so my father made a deal with I think it was CNR to work for them for a certain period of time, and I think he worked on the railroads for quite a while. I think for 49 cents an hour or something like that. And then a year later, he was able to bring us to Canada. And by that time, he had bought this lot in a place called McIville. And it was actually at the end of a cow path. And that's how the developer had decided to go, just sell lots along this cow path that he had. He was actually a farmer. He had milking cows, and so we lived up this cow path, up this road along the cow path, and my father built the home himself, and so every weekend he kept adding to the house so that we had a place to live. Very tough times. But you didn't really think of them as tough times because that was life. That was the way it was. And you kind of assumed it was that kind of life for everybody. And it was for all our neighbors and the people who were around us. It was a community of French and English speaking people and a lot of Europeans who spoke neither language, who were just trying to muddle their way through it and taking any kind of job that was available. And my father, who had been had his own company in Estonia, was now a laborer, and he worked shoveling ditches and things like that to make a living. And later on, he became a carpenter, and it's hard to believe it now, but he actually had money left over to build a house and then eventually to buy some real estate, which really allowed us to escape from that kind of life where you were right on the edge of poverty. In fact, Christmas where we had nothing.
Really, probably an exemplary kind of story of Canada and the growth of Canada, with so many people coming and looking for a new life and starting and building. And I think our country is still building on those same principles. And it's the foundation of families like yours that have made Canada what it is today.
That's true. And you don't really, at least I didn't realize how tough it was for my parents until later on in life, because to have, first of all, escaped the communist regime in Estonia, and then lived in these camps that were set up in Germany, to come to Canada and live on the edge of poverty. It was an extraordinary, must have been very trying for my parents, but in a sense, I think it was very character building. You took nothing for granted. You always, I remember university was kind of a must do. I mean, it was absolutely essential that you got a university degree. I had a brother and a sister, or still do, and every one of them got educated. My father started to, I guess, build his wealth right away. And so we were quite happy that we had a home at the end of this cow path, because it was better than the alternative, which appeared to us, at least anyway, that my father would have been shot. He had been taken to be shot at least twice, and he somehow managed to talk his way out of it. So the idea that here we were living in this free country and we were allowed to build our own future was just, we regarded it as a tremendous opportunity. It was wonderful. And being in the middle of a cow path gave us certain freedoms that children growing up in the city never could experience. We became independent. We always sought knowledge, and that was our way of life.
As you look back on that now and reflect on your parents and the hardships they went through to benefit you, what principles or what things about that still motivate you and have helped create who you are today?
Well, I think hard work is one of them. And working smart is another thing. Education was so important, but that it never stopped. I remember coming to Vancouver in, I guess, in 1965, and one of the first things I did was go to the library and take out about half a dozen books, and on any subject. There was nothing that was limiting. It wasn't that I went down one road for education. It was everything. And I tried to read at least a book a day. And boy, doing that, you really have to do a lot of reading, and you have to focus on the reading rather than all the fun that everyone else was having. So education is extremely important. Then the next thing, of course, is how do you use that education? And since the idea that we were free, having escaped the clutches of communism, was such a big issue in our family, then the idea that freedom could be found in books and in your own endeavors became a mantra. Find your own way, do your own thing, and work hard. So that was a very important part of my growing up.
So, and then you talked about how you ended up coming to Vancouver and the mining industry. How did you end up living in South Surrey, White Rock?
Well, we decided that we would buy our own office building at one point. We had been fairly successful. I think we had over 300 clients in the mining and the oil business. So we thought it's time that we got our own place. And we looked around in Vancouver, and the buildings that were available in Vancouver were large buildings, and you virtually had to you had to manage the building, and that would take time away from what we were focused on, which was the mining industry, contracting exploration work, doing geophysics, geology, that kind of thing. So we found this beautiful place in South Surrey, which would house our various employees. And we found a very nice home on Thrift Avenue overlooking the water, and it had a view right onto Mount Baker. So we felt very lucky to be in this paradise. And we've been here ever since. That was back in I think it was back in 1982 that we came to White Rock. And most of our business was done outside of White Rock, but the employees and the center of the operations was always White Rock.
And when did you and JR hook up and get involved, and how has she been supporting you and sort of keeping you in line?
Well, JR, of course, is my wife, and she's been I met her in 1978, and interestingly enough, we had sort of crossed paths before, but never really encountered each other. And she was working at UBC, at the Alma Mater Society in UBC, and she had these great technological know-how with computers. And so I bought a computer from the Alma Mater Society at UBC, and she was the one who was operating it. So she kind of had to come with it, otherwise I would have had a computer and no way of using it. So it turned into a romance, and I would say that if there's anyone that was responsible for expanding Strato, it was her, because all of a sudden we could, with a computer, we could organize things so much better. We could take on larger projects, and I didn't have to spend my time trying to figure out just where we were with accounts and inform our clients as to how we were proceeding on the contracts that we had.
So she was really the backbone of the company then, that kept things going while you were out there doing the selling and promoting and issuing
Yes.
around. That's the foundation of that.
Yeah, that's correct. And she was one of these people who is really takes on responsibilities in a very serious way. And so it was nothing for us to be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, that was our fun, that was our playground, and it was our business.
So what is your fun in your playground today? What are the things that you do that keep you passionate about so many things and keep you involved? And whether it's backing and supporting in different municipal elections or whatever it might be, what is it that gives you that passion and that verve that still exists today?
Well, of course, you know, one of the things I enjoy more than anything else is talking to you. So, so the kinds of conversations that we have, uh, I enjoy so much because they cover a lot of ground. Um, I think they're philosophical, psychological in nature. They examine they examine humankind in a way that has some depth to it. I absolutely love that kind of thing. And of course, being a politician, you would know that human behavior is one of the most important things that you have to consider in being successful. So I love that. A lot of people with small businesses in particular come to me and ask me how to get ahead. How do you build a business? And one of my first partners was a psychologist, so he uh, helped me with having the intuitive knowledge of people to see exactly where they go astray. Business is one of these wonderful things where very few succeed, at least not for a very long time, anyway. And there are certain critical variables that are inherent in running a successful business. Uh, I think that if there's anything I enjoy, it's kind of being able to sit down with someone and listen to their story, and then be able to translate that story into how it's going to affect their business and the way they do things and how they handle people. And it's almost being able to hear that story, the narrative that the person has, as in the case here, you can almost predict where the problems are going to be. And if you're able to actually help guide them through their own issues, then I think it can be very helpful. So that's what.
One of my favorite movies is To Kill a Mockingbird, and in that Judge Taylor, or Harper Lee, who wrote the book based upon, she has Judge Taylor at one point saying, people generally see what they look for and hear what they listen for. And as you're talking about talking to people and counseling them around approaches, how would you reflect that kind of statement from Harper Lee, that it seems that we get locked into a belief system and we therefore generally see what we're looking for and then hearing what we're listening for. So if we do that, we seem to keep confirming what we already believe. So how then do we move out of that notion to understand, and how have you been able to broaden your horizons and not get locked into what Harper Lee referred to in that statement?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because I think that there have been a lot of books written on the subject, but in my own particular case, you know, my business lasted for a long time. That's an unusual thing. And one of the reasons that it lasted so long was because when I got whacked in the head, I went backwards instead of forwards and tried to reorganize the way I thought things out. And some of these issues were very deep-seated issues. And I think that's the difficulty with being set in your ways, is because you don't really want to deal with your own issues. You're always blaming somebody else for what goes wrong. So I spent a lot of time being very introspective about things, just try to, instead of looking at what someone else has done to me, try and spend a lot of time figuring out why I've received it in a certain way, what my own interpretations were and how wrong, and mostly trying to focus on how I didn't perceive things correctly. But the true test for everything is being able to plan something and then actually have the plan work. And I've found that probably over 90% of the time we plan things that never work. And so trying to bring the two together is a really difficult process. And it's one that you have to really ask yourself the tough questions. And sometimes it's very painful to do that.
So you talked earlier about getting books and reading and studying everything, and it reminded me of being a generalist and looking things without sort of locked into one belief system. And certainly I think being a generalist allows us to look more broadly at issues, to have number of perspectives. And is that something that's been a part of who you are and how you've just kind of described yourself, looking at it from different perspectives, from stepping back? And so is that educational approach and that reading has led you into that type of perspective?
I think so. I think it's been education. I think that Ken Gordon and his insights into human beings were of tremendous help. I mean, that occurred back in the 1960s. And so when people come to me for either an investment or help in organizing a company, I try to understand who they are. And the next thing I try to do is look at myself and say, what is it that there is about me that sees them in that particular way? Is there some other way? And so it's a constant, it's an evolving process. And one of the things that's very disruptive in that process is the confidence with which people come in, having screwed up their life and their business. And then you have to break through that without offending them or hurting their feelings, because they're not going to move ahead, or I'm not going to be very helpful if I offend them. So you have to be very meticulous in how you deal with people if your intention is to assist them in some way to get out of their current circumstances.
So we're getting close to the end of our time. So given your broad experience and reading and things that you've learned, what kind of message would you pass on to any of the viewers or people who might be looking at this 25 years from now and trying to see, is there any messages that or philosophies or approaches that become apparent to you in your life that you'd like to pass on?
Well, I don't know that messages really carry that much weight, but I can say this, that humility in a person is really the key. And it's not humility in front of other people. It's humility in front of a mirror when you're looking at yourself. And being able to take that sick feeling of having done something crazy and making it into framing it into something that's positive, being thankful that it happened, and then reorganizing your life based on that humility.
That's a great phrase. I just recently read a quote from Daniel Kahneman, who was won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he's a psychologist, the first psychologist to win it. And was asked, well, what happens when you have proven that one of your theories is wrong? How do you respond to that? And he said, I am so grateful to learn that another thing that I have done wrong has now changed. I am so thankful when people correct me, which I thought was a reflective of the kind of comments that you're making. That
Yes, I think that's so true. And you almost have to change your own mindset to be able to do that, because it's not an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to accept that you are just totally and absolutely wrong, and that you have to reorganize yourself, your thoughts, maybe make a lot of apologies to people that you've hurt, and eat humble pie. And I try to do that as frequently as I can. I've gone back to people and apologized for my ways, and I think that when you truly learn, then you have to accept that you have misspoken, or that you weren't quite as smart as you thought you were.
great message. Thank you so much, Hank, for being a guest on Community Connections. It's most appreciated and most informative. Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.